Hello and welcome to the Love Foundry podcast. It is Sunday, the 6th of April, and we have Taylor in Maui, and Dan in LA, and myself also in LA. And I think we're going to talk about spiritual initiative or spiritual intention.
Yeah, I think. Taylor, what's your words on the subject?
Well, take some damn initiative.
All right, let me set the stage. One of the best commentators on the subject is Rudolf Steiner, just to put it in your camp, Taylor, because you like the guy.
I love him.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, he's been dead for 70 years. How long has he been dead? Probably about 100 almost now.
Irrelevant.
He's still among us, and he's still very much functional with his anthroposophy movement in the world to try to save humanity's bacon.
Man, you finally articulate that word so well. Yeah, I always struggle with it. I'm like, anthroposophy? Anthroposophy? Anthroposophy?
Yeah, well, I know. Don't upset the audience because they have the same difficulty. Yeah, then there's anthroposophic, and then there's all of these other offspring of the word. It's kind of an unfortunate choice to start a movement around that word, but he doesn't really have a choice. So the point about spiritual initiative, which is what we're talking about here, is it connects both halves of your nature together. And in the human race right now, and all of this was prophesized by a lot of different people, but and in prophets themselves back in the day, and in the ancient archives of hierarchy and all the other places where this has been seen coming, because it's the natural outcome of things evolving. We have come to the most material place in the whole story humanity has. And you can look around and that's obvious. You look at the internet and you look at what people are doing with the internet and how we obsess ourselves with our things that we do. And you realize that we have lost spiritual initiative. We don't bring the two balances of our life, the inner and the outer, in spiritual terms. We've reduced the inner to what are material subjects. Emotional body and your emotions and your emotional intelligence are not subjective spiritual parts of us. They're part of the material part of us, as is the intellect at this stage of human intellect's development. Everything has to grow up. And so they're all atoms of matter, so to speak. Emotional atoms are atoms of matter. Lower mind, which is brain mind, is based on the atoms of the brain. And the consciousness formed around it is a material consciousness. So without being scientific or getting into that conversation of why is that so, let's just look at that for a moment and let it be true for a moment, just while we consider it. So the true subjective nature to a human nature is its soul nature, which has very little definition, and our spirit nature, which has even less definition. Now, those two concepts in humanity are not new. The Greeks had soul in their conversation, and they were building their philosophy with that in it. But humanity, in its descent into materialism, which has been going on since the Greeks, the Stoics of the Greeks, and even before, it's been going on for a million years. We surrendered it. We surrendered soul. And think about this. This is how, I'm just trying to get this said quickly so we can get to what is. But today, in this cancel world that we got, that we're just trying to get ourselves unstuck from, if you bring up certain things in academia, then you are canceled. No, we don't talk about those. We don't let those become real in the conversation. And you're like, well, why not? That's how I see it. Well, we don't see it. And we are the authorities and we run the college. So if you bring this up or you talk about this or you bring that into things, you don't get to have tenure. You don't get to be on the, you get fired, basically. You get canceled. And Jordan Peterson's a classic example of that in Canada, where he said, I don't want to give up my freedom because I think your idea of trying to force me to talk about other people's sexuality the way they want me to is taking away of my freedom. I don't mind doing it as a courtesy. If Seb wants to be a they, I'll maybe go along with that because I like Seb. But the moment you make it a law, you're now stealing something sacred to me. You're stealing my essential freedom, which is different from the reasons why we want you to do this. Wanting me to do it is fine. You can want anything, but forcing me to do it violates something else. So everybody conformed with that. Now, this happened also 100 years ago, back in Rudolf Steiner's day. If you, in Europe, where the existentialists and the intellectuals were banding back and forth about what's real and what isn't, and these weren't stupid guys and they weren't bad guys, but they believed in the ethical rationalism that came out of the Greeks and said, okay, look, this idea of soul is some mythical thing and we don't want it. It tends towards religion. We don't like that either. So we're not going to discuss it. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to not talk about soul. If you talk about spirit and soul, you're going to be out. So stuff like that is how materialism slowly and gradually eliminates all that conversation in our schools, in our theories, in our conversation. And then we make rules and we print textbooks for 5-year-olds in schools. And we don't allow any of those terms to be discussed unless we authorize it, unless we agree how it should be discussed.
Yeah.
And so we strip all of that and we classified it as religion, which it's not. You can build soul or spirit into a religion, but the things themselves transcend all religions in terms of what they actually are in our reality. Mm-hmm. But we did that. We stripped all that out. And slowly we forget about it so that people don't have a basis in their consciousness to build a concrete thought around spirit or around soul. We just have vague ideas what they might mean. And then you got AI now, which is going to define everything for you. So you won't have a choice of thinking about it in your own freedom. How do I think about spirit? What do I think about soul? By looking inside my space and seeing what it looks like. Yeah. We got, so you see what we've done. We've turned out the lights. We closed the door. We've said these words are not acceptable.
I think there's hope though, Dan, because I think there's hope because all of those things that are happening now, I did to myself just years before. I became, I denied all of the religions. I denied that those things existed because I was getting it preached to me that I didn't felt it was a truthful way. So I went, the very scientific material way. I got more sided from one side to another. I was, canceling things in my own mind, of like, this is right, this is wrong. So I don't support this anymore.
Right.
But at some point I realized none of that was how to make the world better, because my intention was always like, how do I improve the world? How do I? And at some point I realized that wasn't going to work, and that's when I started to open up to love and the idea of this connecting to what's more, because I knew it was there. I just didn't know in what faculty, and I knew what was being told to me was the truth wasn't the whole truth. So, but I think that must mean that there's some hope in there, because that's where the world is at now. And if I could go from locking myself up, bound in it, to freeing myself from that and seeing that that wasn't true, the prison I made for myself wasn't true, and I'm not saying I'm free totally of that prison, but I at least got out of that door within a door. So I think there's maybe some hope in that.
Okay, well, that's what your generation has. That's where your generation is, and I think that says it quite well. And I have a hard time speaking for my generation about it because I'm kind of an anomaly in it.
Yeah.
And Taylor's in the mix there somewhere, and she's kind of an anomaly too. And anomalies are those that have something going on that their generation mostly doesn't. And if you look at Taylor, you have sisters, you have brother, you have other people in your family, and you see where they are relative to your consciousness of just someone like Rudolf Steiner, who was extraordinarily eccentrically spiritual. And I say eccentrically because he could do things and say things and act on things and had the courage to do it that other people had no idea how he did it or what he's doing. And so, and having been introduced to him back in the 60s, I have had some time to mature my relationship to the gentleman, who was dead before that, but he did an enormous amount to fight against this elimination and turning us into material trogs. So the point about spiritual initiative, which is, as I said, he gave some commentary to, and I'm just, because he does things in a way that is not biased toward or for anything. It's simply truth, his idea of truth, what he sees as true, with equal acceptance and respect for people who are doing it. If he thinks someone's doing something that's causing this materialistic increase in humanity, endangering our future, he doesn't judge them or reject them. He simply accepts them.
Yeah.
Because that's part of us. That's what's really going on. And everything in a mature spiritual consciousness, everyone's right. And we just go, well, I can't be. We can't all be right. Yes, we can. And that's the nature of love. Because at a certain stage of evolution, a caterpillar is just a little grub. And then it's a bug that has fur on it and a lot of legs and crawls around eating things. And then at another stage of maturity, it's a completely different creature living like a completely. So you can look at that creature and go, this is what it is. And then you go, wait a minute, it's something else. And wait a minute, it's something else completely. And now it's got wings and it's flying around. So from a certain point of view, everything is right. And materialism is a necessary and right stage of human development so that we can operate in the physical world practically, intelligently, and spiritually. But when you get to the point where you have this intense practical materialization with an intellect and an emotional body and a physical development, by the time you get that, in order to get that, we threw everything else out. We threw the baby out with the bathwater. And from that exact point of absolute materialism, which your generation, Seb, is completely, I mean, like I describe it as a Walmart parking lot. Everybody's been rolled over. So, but that's great. That's like a farmer said, all the seeds are gone. We planted all the seeds in the fields out there flat. We rolled it over. Yeah, you did. That's what they're doing. They're under the ground and they're germinating, and they're going to all start popping up little green shoots like you did and I did and everybody does. And pretty soon you're going to see a whole field full of green out there. And that's the awakening of humanity that's going on everywhere right now. They don't know what's awakening. And that's why talking about this in terms of spiritual initiative is good, and why I really respected Steiner's conversation. Because what he's saying is, look, you're utterly unconscious material entity, which is just all those secular people are proud of themselves. They got rid of religion. They got rid of belief in anything. They've settled down to a nice material condition, and we just let it roll along. But that's not the end result. That's where we are. Now, if you bring a spiritual initiative to that, everything starts to change. So we're seeing how that got a little parade going there behind you. That's perfect. That's fine. We don't. That's great. So, so how is that going to work? Well, it's startling to recognize how much we're missing of ourselves in our conversation about life and about who and what we are. I feel this way about that. I want this. I desire that. I need this. I think this. See, all of that kind of conversation is fine, but it's all material conversation. It has no spirituality in it. So unless you want to say, you know, I feel this about Jesus, okay, all right, you do. But mostly conversation about religion is material conversation as well, because this removal of soul and spirit has happened to the churches and religions as well.
Yeah.
They're very busy talking about a lot of things, but not about the nature of the inner man or woman. They're just busy talking about their opinion about all of this stuff, and which the Christ never did, or anyone who actually was embracing that inner world and expressing it to others. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a fault. No one's to blame. It's just where we are. So what do? We pick a spiritual initiative and we put it into our material expression, and we see what happens. We see how it happens. And it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish and you pick a Jewish spiritual initiative, or a Christian, or any other thing. Because what you do is you don't do the ism of it, which is the dogma of it or the conversation about it. You reach into it and you find a connection to the energy and power that made it real, that makes it something. And you bring that into your initiative. You make your initiative function with energy and purpose and not thought and feeling. You'll have thoughts and feelings about it. That's okay. Thoughts and feelings about things are natural to humans. But the essence of a spiritual initiative is spirituality. Find the energy of it. Find the power in it. Find the connection to it, and bring that into yourself to add it to your material expression. And if you do that with integrity, if you do that with, I mean, it's in you. No one else can do it. You can do it. Not what someone else thinks you should do, or I think you should do, or Taylor thinks you should do. Taylor's raising kids, and she has to figure out how to get the kids to do the same thing. How do you get them to form their personality in the world out of this junk that the rest of us are building egos out of, and at the same time bring some spiritual initiative in? It has to be their spiritual initiative, not hers. She might like Rudolf Steiner, but they may not. We don't know yet. We have to come to age and find out. But the inner truth is the same for all of us. It may not look the same to all of us, but it is the same to all of us. It has spirit in it. It has soul in it. It has energies and forces and a history in there that we can embrace and bring in and mix it with. If we don't do that, if we do not add spiritual initiative to our material construct, we will turn it over to material forces. And you'll see that that's the danger encroaching on humanity today.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is great, but if you replace your intelligence with it, what are you going to be? It is going to be evolving through you. You're not going to be evolving it, because everything that functions in nature, everything, materialism, all of the names that we give anything, these are things out there that are growing around us in nature towards the same light, raising themselves upward. And the material entity or the spiritual entities, and I call them whatever you will, they all have different names in different times. And some of those names carry forward to this time, and new names are going to be given to new ones, or the old ones as we discover them, rediscover them. So the entity behind materialism is intelligent, and it has force, and it functions. We don't see it, we don't understand it, we don't know how to quantify it, but we can certainly be rolled over by it because it's group and it's big and it's powerful, and humanity has really embraced it dynamically. But what happened to your spiritual initiative in that process? If it got paved over, you're going to have to push your little green chute up through the blacktop to the sun, to the light. And it's there. It's there to push right through. So if you don't, and you don't have to, and some won't, some people are completely conveniently comfortable with the idea of anyone else being responsible for them but them. Let the government do it. Let everybody do it. Just tell me where to stand and I'll stand there. Give me my phone and my whatever, the stuff that gets me through the day, and I'm good. And so now, Taylor, do you agree with what I'm saying, or do you like it or dislike it, or what are you thinking? You're a Steiner fan. Do you think of that? Have you ever listened to his comment on it?
Likely. I mean, I've read most of his books and his lectures, but yeah, I was thinking about it as you were talking about how I go about it with children, because and what I do is it's always just there. It's always included. It's not like material world is separate from spiritual world. It's just, and that's how I think Steiner approaches it too. And the image of the butterfly is one of Steiner's like go-to examples with children, because it's something that they can see how things can transform, and it's already there inside of them. And that's the key, is it's already there inside of them. And the same thing with material world is the spirit is already inside of it. It's not like you have to add it to it or go looking for it. You just acknowledge it almost inside of yourself or inside of the world around you, and it's just there. It's just as natural as the material world is as well.
Okay. Now, if it is in there and it is natural and you do acknowledge it, then what happens to it? It strengthens, doesn't it?
Yeah, and your consciousness, it's subtle difference, but it's like the world takes on kind of it becomes a different place, and it's still the same place, but it's different. And things don't seem to matter as much. So it's funny because I'm using the word matter, because you're in this world of matter, but it doesn't matter so much because the spiritual world that's there is right here with you. So these things that would be so, there's so much drama about, or such catastrophe, it's kind of like how Steiner didn't have opinions about it, or it was just, that's what was there. It's just part of what's going on. And
all right, now hold that thought for a second, because the purpose, so you get the picture. There's an inner world, there's an outer world. The outer world is what we refer to as material world. The inner world is not non-material, it's substantial, which means that it's substance. Substance, let's differentiate for a second. Substance is differentiated from matter. Now, matter is substance because it's stuff. But in the conversation we're having of the duality of spiritual worlds and material worlds, substance is that matter which has been impregnated by consciousness of some kind of being, angelic being, spirit being, God being, whatever it is, the substance itself of the world in which that lives, the spiritual world, is responsive to an energy. And that energy we define as love. That's the difference between inner and outer that we're missing. Now, it's not all the difference, and there's certainly other differences, but the one that humanity is suffering from is the lack of consciousness of love, which gives it an inability to apply it to its own life. And it's an incredibly difficult problem because love has certain qualities that we really need. We need them, and they're available to us because they're in us. And if that spiritual initiative lends you towards releasing that love into your material consciousness and into the physical form you occupy, then you're going to be able to enjoy it. Now, that's why the Love Foundry that we support is doing what it's doing, so that people can find that inner initiative connected to love as an energy that they really don't understand. And it's because you don't have its powers. If you're missing a power in the ultraviolet spectrum of light, for example, there may be some power there that we know nothing about. We've never thought about it. We've never embraced it. We've never looked at what it could do. And science hasn't discovered it yet. So they don't know how to offer it to us. It's still there. It may be there. There may be a tremendous benefit from it. But until it appears in our world, we're ignoring it. And by ignoring it, we're not giving ourselves the ability to apply it. Now, it's going to apply itself naturally because you get a suntan or a sunburn when you go out in the sunshine from the ultraviolet. So it's not having no effect on us, but we haven't figured out how to turn it to our advantage, to what we need it to do for us. But love is not different from that, really. It's an energy. It's an aspect of life itself, and it's present in the environment, and it carries in it great properties of healing, which was demonstrated by those who possess it, not just Jesus and his experiences with love, but others who followed after and tried to apply that to themselves have performed and are still performing miracles all over the place with that energy, because it has the power in it to heal. Now, we don't know how to employ that power personally very well, but your body does. If you injure yourself, your body's healing up. And but there are circumstances under which that energy can suddenly release itself into the space, and oh my God, that person just went from death's door to abundant health. Now, how did that happen? Well, that power was released in that energy. And so how do we bring that initiative into our life? And that's just one of the powers that love possesses. That word that we use to describe that energy, which we could use other words, magnetic attraction. We could call it something completely different. But it has that transformational potential with disease. It also has transmutational potential, which means it's like all signs of the disease. I had sores, I had leprosy, I had whatever it was that suddenly went away, means that there was a power inside that energy once it was released that caused that to completely transmute into something normal, something natural. And it has other powers. It has powers of unity, which we don't know what the power of unity does as a benefit to us until we experience it. And then suddenly you get the feeling of the realization that you are connected to everything, and everything's connected to you. And yet you're still not being bothered by it. You're being strengthened and made immortal by it. You're growing into the consciousness of its endless, constant support of your consciousness. And then there's the proverbial qualities like grace. The concept of grace is fabulous, but how many people can just download grace and express it through them with this wonderful release of beauty and balance and art in their expression of consciousness and feeling and form? So if you're going to give yourself a spiritual initiative into the material nature of our nature, then pick something that brings down these violently positive qualities. It is a kind of violence, because if you bring healing into someone's dis-ease, it just takes over. and rearranges and changes and does things. And Seb, you were talking about a condition that your mother experiences that's not healthful, and how her own lack of faith in that inner spiritual initiative traps her in that experience, when you yourself have a feeling or faith that there is a possibility that could all change. Yeah, but you also know that free will is the requirement of love. Love requires your free will to act positively and abundantly in its direction before it will come in your direction. Now, it's already there, but to break that barrier down of unconscious to conscious and to release that positive expression in you, there has to be an acceptance by your free will and a willingness and to release of that in you. Now, you can do that for yourself, and you can imagine your mother releasing into the same thing. But if you look at her and say, well, she can't do that, she's too negative, she's too blocked, she won't trust it, she has no faith in it, she gave up her religion, she gave up God, she gave up the soul, she gave up love, that may all be true. But you haven't. And if you did, you're recovering it. I can throw away money when I have done that woefully many times, but that doesn't mean I can't get more, or you can't get that money back, but that doesn't mean you can't get more. So there's a stream of love flowing through the universe, and we're in the stream. You can't get out of the stream, but you can be unconscious of its flow around you like an island. You don't notice it. And so spiritual initiative put into your life will do these things. Now, you have to rationalize it. You have to figure it out. You have to apply it. And so you have to offer to your mother or to anyone a willingness to help them explore the unexplored in them. And by your willingness to offer it and explore it in yourself, you're leading them in that direction. There's no other way for them to go. If they want to keep a relationship with you, they're going to be touching someone who has that alive in them. And it doesn't take much genius to see that if you have a bunch of people that are alive to this inner initiative of love in them, that it's going to be connected to other people, and it's going to stimulate that in them, and it's going to bring them to a place of appreciation of that same quality. And to collectively, due to the qualities and powers of love, collectively, we're going to start experiencing it, expressing it, and demonstrating it in our material form to everybody else. And then they can go, wow, we've got all this material stuff. That's great. That's good. That's where we are. But we can add this to it. And all of a sudden it starts taking on a far different look and positive possibility. Now, is that true to you or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I know it is.
So it's not it's not join a religion, go out and start a philosophy. Just do it.
Yeah.
And if you're wrong, you'll figure it out because it won't be working really well. But there is in us a compass, and it points to that story, because that's the future story of the human race. So it's coming to meet us. And if we free our compass up, it'll point to it. And when it does, then you think, what do I need to do to strengthen that initiative in me? Because it's not a material initiative. We already have plenty of those material initiatives going. I'm trying to get AI to write my thesis for my class at school so I can get through that thing and get a decent grade and be a genius through AI. We have lots of initiatives going. So here, you're trying to win your game points on your new riot game or whatever you're doing. But this is a different process. This is a non-material process. And you're by just doing what I'm talking about, and by Taylor introducing that conversation into her family where she's raising them, you're acknowledging the inner half of a human being with the outer, and they aren't exactly half. Spirit's in there, and that takes up probably a third. Soul takes up a third, which has different levels of its own capacity. And then the material world is an expression of reflecting all of that in matter. So that's all going on, and we're not trying to call things exactly, we're just referencing them. But if you take that inner initiative and apply it to your outer material place where it's missing, it's a wonderful idea, because suddenly you realize I'm introducing a new agency into my material agency, which means it's going to change it. It's going to improve it. It's going to expand it. It's going to do things with it. Now, Taylor, how do you incorporate that in your life with your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really look at it as any separation. And so it's funny because you mentioned unity, and I thought, wow, that's kind of the first thing that actually naturally just becomes the expression, is it's just like this unification. And it's like you almost have to work to see the difference between the two at some point, because it's just all included there. You know, there's this unification where you almost have to pull out of that to see the duality in some ways. It's, you know, and it just strengthens, it just keeps growing, and you don't want to pull back out of it. You just want that unification to grow more and more. And I don't know, that's sort of how I am looking at it.
Okay, well, that's a valuable point of view, because we see that duality is not a permanent condition, even though the world thinks opposites are a permanent condition. It thinks left and right, good and bad, liberal and conservative. All these opposites that we have observed have a unity. When you take that inner initiative and mix it with the outer material expression, on every level and every way, and every inner way and outer way and thing that you can imagine, unity is produced. It produces a new unity, a unity that is more inclusive than the duality that we've been looking at. And so, and this is an important consideration, because all the Buddhists and a lot of people don't want duality. Like, duality is a naysay. We want unity, but your consciousness is not prepared for full unity. It has to step by step grow into that unity in a real world way, in a way where you recognize the difference that happens. Without seeing it, you recognize that when full unity occurs in your consciousness, you will see everything differently. You can't help it, because you're seeing things in the duality now. You're seeing things with the absence of the inner spiritual world blended fully with your outer material world. That's why it's in danger of taking over humanity, because we are not supporting our inner spiritual initiative with sufficient strength. Once we start doing that, then the outer material control over our thinking and feeling and world activities starts to diminish, because I think Taylor's taking care of other things for a moment. So that's going to happen. And as we do that, we're inventing a new world. And as we invent a new world, it has unity as an expression, and the old idea of how the world looked starts to fade away. And when a larger group of humanity than we have today joins the human race and expresses the unity world, they won't be immediately attacked by everybody who sees the separated world and thinks that they're right. They suddenly realize, oh, okay, that's a unity world expressing with love and spirit in a material embrace, which means we get a wholeness going here. We're not trying to get away from the material world. Some people are. Some people want to go up onto the nirvanic plane or whatever and avoid material expression because it's such a screwed up place to be. But if you put wholeness there, it changes. It starts to become whole and positive, and we can change all of it into something that humanity enjoys living in with harmony and grace and that type of experience. That's going to happen unless we let the material entity, which doesn't care about any of that, overtake us, and we turn ourselves over to that. And not as if it were some devil or you can call something that seems to steamroll over your higher nature, your spiritual nature. You can call it all kinds of things if you want, but it's just a part of life that's functioning, like bacteria. I don't know where bacteria are going, but they're an evolving life form. And they can kill you if you don't manage them in your space. So can viruses, as we've found out. So we can't hate everything that we have to manage. A wave can, well, Taylor's in Hawaii, a wave will kill you there. That's not the wave's fault. So living in a material world can be managed beautifully, perfectly, dynamically, with energies of life if we let them into us and we employ them positively and properly. But you have to start somewhere, and starting with spiritual initiative will grow that.
Yeah. John Muir, who I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, but a great lover of nature, he said, when you're in the river, you don't let the river doesn't go around you, the river goes through you. And I think that was him sort of displaying the connection that he had for the love of nature that he had, and becoming sort of one with that.
Yeah.
But I also recently I had a conversation with a friend, and she was telling me how she was big into the church, and she got to a place where she felt very angry with God and with the church, and frustrated with it all, and kind of left it. And she was at a place where she felt like she had kind of committed herself and was doing all the things that had been sort of told to her by the church that you do, and it's kind of, it puts it out here, and it's kind of, you do these things and you get grace with God, and God will give you his blessings, and there's all these people giving their stories of how this is working in their life and all this. And I heard this, and I was like, I have got nothing against the church, but I said the only part of it that I don't see eye to eye with the church is like, it's not, God is not something out there that we gain favor and the powerful God blesses us. I was like, God is like right here. There's no separate connection that we have to make. And it's not about God, we gain favor and God serves us. I was like, we connect all of it and we offer ourselves to it. We're serving the whole, but by serving the whole, we're serving ourselves at the same time. And the whole is serving us because we've joined it. I just feel like our separation from that relationship that we already have, by making it something so external, is the only thing that cuts us off from that part of life that we are already, if that makes any sense at all.
In a sort of sensible way, yes. However, what's missing in that conversation? What's missing in there is your humility towards God. You see, there is a presence around you greater than yourself, that loves you and cares about you. There is that. Now, how we characterize it in various religions, I mean, we used to sacrifice goats to it. Some people still do. We used to come and bring baskets of fruit and put them at the statue that we carved to represent that deity. And there was a time in the past when we had an open sort of perception of the existence in the outer space, behind the sky, behind the mountain, behind the material. There exists within it great beings of love and intention. And some of them have taken notice of the suffering of humanity and perhaps done very great things to keep us moving in the right direction. And it is that kind of relationship that kept the Jewish culture going along the way, all the way to where it led to an individual within it who was capable of doing something completely different. So we have a time in our cycle of all different civilizational stages of humanity where we have different relationships to the wholeness of it all. And today, in the materialization of the church and the materialization of everything else in our world, we have stripped out a lot of the reality of it. So we're working according to rules and orders and organizations. And so this is what God wants you to do. Well, that idea is not real for you. And so you can't use it. You can't use an idea that's not real to you. And if you looked exactly at what happened to somebody who is born again and let's take the Christian perspective of born again people, which isn't so much a Catholic thing. If you look at someone who has the experience of being born again, you're going directly back to Paul, who was the root of that conversation in the Christian church, who was himself born again. Just like that, he did. And he had conversion on the road to Damascus to the realization of the God within, which shows up in him. Now, what's the difference between that voice that shows up and says, Paul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you? Because he's rounding up Christians to turn them into the Romans to be crucified, stuff like that, stuff that's not very friendly to the locals. So when that voice shows up and says that to him, where does that voice come from? He heard it in his head, and he didn't see a person right there. I don't know exactly how the Bible describes that moment for him, but I don't think he had an angel standing in front of him, but he could have. I don't remember exactly. He did have a light go off in the head, which is common in that experience, which blinds you because something's happening in you. And something's happening in you, and something was happening in you because he was doing something wrong in his faith. In his faith, he thought he was serving Jehovah. He thought he was serving that external God you're talking about, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. He just wasn't doing what it wanted by persecuting people who are trying to become Christians, who are trying to find the God within them instead of the God out there. By persecuting those people, he's not serving any spiritual entity of any positive quality. He's got it screwed up, and it's eaten his ass because he's not feeling right about it. You know, something doesn't just show up to smack him around. He is having trouble. His personality is doing what it thinks is right, but his inner nature, this inner spiritual initiative that he has in him, because he's a very devout man, he's a very devout religious man, is telling him somewhere inside him, he's going, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this. This is destroying lives. Yeah, they're not doing what the church said they should do. So he's right caught in that space between the materialization of his own religion, which was Jewish, and the birth of a new one. And so what happens? What happens is something that needs to be realized in him. It's not the fault of some God out there. The nature of Jehovah is something that is a very deep thought. It's a deep idea. What is this entity? Where does this energy come from that is this inner universe being or creature? Well, look at Saturn. Look at it. It's a solar being. It's a cosmic being. The planet Saturn is a cosmic being. So it's fully capable of having a relationship to Earth or to the humanity of Earth. And because we don't see into that cosmic relationship, we don't know anything about it. But there may have been a time in the past when humanity could see that relationship. See, we assume older indigenous people were stupid. They weren't stupid. They just simply weren't intellectual. They were relating to their world. And some parts are relating because they did not have what you have. You have the ability to apply inner spiritual initiative to your life. You didn't have that in the past. You didn't have the intellectual ability. You didn't have the emotional maturity. You didn't have the physical anchoring. So now you do. So now you have to redefine your spiritual relationship to everything, starting with what's inside of you. And that was what we've been learning. And look, Christianity has its faults, and many of them are in the rejection of everything that happened before it. Every religion, when it grows big And we see it today. We see the competing religions today with the Muslims and the Christians, and the Hindus don't compete so much. They just kind of do their own thing. And the Buddhists are like, we take everybody in, but we don't buy into your stuff. So there's lots of this going on right now in the world. Where's it going to lead to? It's going to lead to a realization of what actually is true. There is an actual truth in the universe. It's running on it, whether we know it or not. So when you come into a better embrace and view of what's actually going on in the universe, then all of this will fit into its place. And you'll realize that it's all true. It's all true from a certain point of view, and all inclusive. There isn't anything left out. There's no bad stuff. There's no better stuff. There's just stuff. And love permeates it all. And when you harmonize it all into one cohesive unity, it works pretty well. That's the hope of the side. And the only way you're going to prove that is if you take spiritual initiative and apply it to yourself. Now, if you want to apply it to everybody else, then you become a dictator of other people's lives. And that never works, which is what we just went through politically. We want equal outcome. We want everybody to think this way. But what is the philosophy of that? Well, there's no soul in it. There's no spirit in it. We're going to teach this stuff in school, whether you like it or not, whether you want your kids to be taught it or not. You see, that kind of imposition does what? It takes away free will. And when you do that, you violate the human nature. The very nature of a humanity on earth is free will. You can't violate that. If you do, but people do because they don't see how to get the end result they want without doing that. That's what happened to Marx and Lenin. They thought they're... Go ahead.
Oh, I have a question about all of this. So what is it in our nature and our consciousness that whenever there is something like, let's say a virus or fibroid, right? Or anything that comes up in you, that it's like we want to go to war with it, right? We want to cut it out. We want to burn it. We want to kill them. We want to, what? It's like, it's one thing I've never really fully grasped. What is it in the nature of human beings?
Ego. See, the human ego believes itself to be separate from other things, particularly disease, and that other guy or girl or whatever it is that we don't like. We used to like them, but now we don't. So we're separate from them. They don't exist in our world. We believe in a separate world, which is contrary to love and contrary to the universe itself. There is no separate part of the universe. There's only the universe and how everything is connected in it. Now, if we don't see that connection, you don't think there's is the baby connected to the mother? Well, you wouldn't know until you saw the umbilical cord. And then you'd realize, oh, the baby's connected directly to the mother. That's where it's getting everything until it grows up in there and is born. And then we sever the umbilical cord, but we never severed the life cord that connects us to the universe that gave birth to us. It's still there. It's always there. Now, the point is the tumor or the disease, the virus, because we don't accept responsibility for why it's in our life. This will carry the world into the law of karma. Understanding the law of karma is not this is what's wrong with the Christianity world that rejected it. Humans didn't reject it. Church leaders rejected it. Remember, nobody said it was or wasn't until church leaders said, let's get rid of that. It was already there. It's in the Jewish tradition. It's in every tradition. And there was no place to eliminate it. There was no place in the Christian story of Jesus where he eliminated it. He never had any reason to eliminate it. So the law of karma brings you into the place where you realize the question you have asked, you have demonstrated to life a lack of understanding the universe. So life, realizing that, brings you a lesson to teach it to you. And therein lies karma. It's more than that. It's bigger and deeper than that. But it's a relationship between you and life, because you are loved by life, and you growing up in life to a whole and healthy being in harmony with love is life's objective. It's the objective of the lords of karma because they serve love. And you can think there is no such thing. It doesn't matter. But there is. There is that intelligent, evolved, developed being that is concerning itself with managing karma.
Thank God.
Yeah, well, you can thank, but you can thank them because nobody told them they had to do that. Everybody in the universe of love is doing what they're doing because the need for someone to do it drew them to it.
Like an impulse.
Yes, it's well, if you see someone drowning out in the ocean, which you have, and you decide there's nobody around to save this person, I've got to do it, then you're going to put your own life at risk. And I remember when you did that, and you were pregnant at the time, so you're putting your baby at risk, which is not really smart in some respects. However, you did that, and so you do it. But that's because we have to. We have to do what we have to do. And
it's true, but life meets you to help you. Love meets you.
Well,
one thing I realized in that experience is like, as soon as you take that upon yourself in that instant, all of a sudden you get a surge of this adrenaline. You get, things open up and present the way to do it.
It does, but not everyone survives it.
No, shit. Well, you don't think about that. Yeah,
no.
It's true. It's true.
No, that is true. It's firemen run into buildings to save people and die in the process, and so do the people. And these are all part of this strange phenomenon called karma. So, but in the end, the lesson is what will be learned, because we also know that no one dies. No one dies. You may leave your body forever. That one be a shame. We like that one. But you will arrive somewhere else in consciousness and begin the process of living there in that inner spiritual presence, and eventually probably as karma and reincarnation, which goes with it. See, reincarnation and karma kind of go hand in hand. They're married. Well, neither one makes sense without the other. Just the way free will and love go hand in hand, that you can't separate the two. Otherwise, there's no rationale for why things are happening the way they are. Seb has to use his free will if he's going to evolve himself to helping his mother. And love's not going to force him to do it without it. So, but his desire to be helpful will bring him to that. And he'll have to grow that consciousness in himself to be helpful. And that's what Ho'oponopono was when we talked about it in the Hawaiian sense. It's that ability to restore yourself to love and to unity with all things, because that's where you started. See, the beautiful thing about the Ho'oponopono in Hawaiian consciousness is that the Hawaiian people know they never were separated from that. They started out in spirit, they came forth from spirit, they go back to spirit. There's no separation. And so, if I affirm that in life, I'm restoring myself to my spiritual unity with everybody else. And if I do that through forgiveness and acceptance, then I'm breaking down the barriers, and that's what's going to happen. And there's a power in there to do it. Like you just said, Taylor, if you make the action to save, make the action to restore for redemption, then you break down the barrier and gift the energy to make it work, unless you aren't strong enough. No, you're muted, so you can undo that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Something else worth mentioning, I think, is the relationship of this reincarnation and karma and how they go hand in hand. And when that becomes something real to you, when you start believing that and you start knowing that to be true, there's something that happens emotionally. And I think it's worth mentioning because your emotions balance out in that process too, somehow, because there's not this super finite ceiling and ground, right? It's like it all flows within it rather than, this ultimate death and this ultimate, it has this reaction, at least in my experience, where, your emotions can get out of control. And somehow it's like, I don't react emotionally to things in the way that I used to, as that's become more real for me when I've understood.
Well, okay. What you're talking about is the result of spiritual initiative.
Yeah.
You see, we're scaled this conversation down, which we've gone probably too long with, but the point is that this is an important realization in humanity because it releases your inner power to do it. The impact of bringing in this spiritual intention is to cause change, and it does. And the result of the change, and do whatever you want if your intention is to bring inner and outer into harmony. See, everything is about the harmony that is created between the material world because you're not rejecting it, you're embracing it. There's nothing wrong with it. You're here. You're here by your choice or life's choice. Something in the universe has got you born into a material world, and here you are. So we can rebel against that, which some people do. That's my last incarnation. I'm never coming back again. I heard that in the 60s. It is, and we'll be popping up from time to time until we master this game, until we are no longer creating that karma, until we have exhausted the lessons we need to learn to manage the inner world of love and the outer world of material. And the result of us doing that personally is a tremendous liberating experience personally in your individuality. But the result of us doing it collectively as a human race liberates the planet. It liberates great spiritual powers that we know nothing about at this stage, because the human kingdom is one of the many kingdoms that are functioning on Earth. And if the human kingdom resolves its inner and outer separation by unifying it and releasing love into the world, what happens to the world? What happens to the whales? What happens to the plants? What happens to the rest of humanity? What happens to the angels? We are going to find out by taking spiritual initiative. Right.
I can't wait for that.
Well, you're doing it now. Don't wait. So
to bring it back to something you mentioned earlier about substance, in a way, it's almost like humanity is in a process of becoming substance, of consciously bringing that into ourselves. And once that consciousness is within us, then we are ourselves substance. Is that true or not?
Well, you're surrounded by atoms. You're packed full of atoms. How many atoms are in your Seb's body? Not just his physical body.
Trillions.
Yeah, more than a trillion.
Yeah. Wow.
But how many are in your emotional body and how many are in your brain mind? We don't know how many atoms have come together to create a unit. It's amazing that the unity is as good as it is. I mean, it's nice that you're sporting that tasty beard you got, but what about your emotional body and your mental body? You're actually starting to come together as a pretty marginally decent human being. Now, as that continues, you think great, maybe an overstatement. I don't know. That's up to Seb. He's on the verge of something, that's for sure. So as that improves and synthesizes and expresses more and more of the inner light and the inner power and the inner intelligence of love. And look, I'm like you, Seb. I don't have any real attachment to religion of any kind. I don't go into churches unless I have a reason to do so because there's something they need from me. I don't go into churches to get something. I go into churches to give something. I love to meditate. I love to meditate in churches. And a lot of the churches have energies in them that need some harmonizing or some healing. And so particularly some of the older ones that people have just kind of let it get kind of cluttered up in there. And so that doesn't mean I'm effective at it, but I meditate on battlefields. I meditate on graveyards, which are really fun because that's an interesting environment. So the point of it is that you have your impact on things, and you can choose the places you want to have impact. You can have impact in religion by joining one. I don't become a Catholic, but I could join their congregation. The thing is, I don't need to. If I'm relating directly to my inner world, then I'm bringing it into me. And if you're doing that, you're bringing it into your temple. which is something that the Mormons talk about, and they're right about it. That's why they have a lot of emphasis on the temple. It's a very physical emphasis, but it's there. That's your temple. That's what Solomon's temple was. Solomon's temple, if you look at it spiritually, is a human form. It physically took the appearance of a human form because that's what they were subconsciously building. They're building God in earth as a human, as a temple. And it has its holy of holies, and it has its heart, and it has its soul, and it has its different location. And every part of a human anatomy is a part of your temple. And so your atoms are being transformed and transmuted by your spiritual initiative. If you take the initiative to bring love into your body, you're bringing it into contact with all those atoms. Now, what that's doing to all those atoms, you don't really know. But we can assume, because human beings improve as time goes on in an atomic way, that it's raising vibration of some kind or another. And older, ancient forms of human expression eventually die out along with the sub-races and races of them, because we take on better versions of ourselves. And they're not better in the sense of superior. They're just a better synthesis of love and spirituality and intelligence and will in forming a rose, you know. Fruit today that we find and like in a store is far different from what they looked like when they first appeared as a peach or an apricot or whatever it was. Many of them have been created by man's relationship to the plant kingdom, encouraging it to produce better fruit for us, more sugar, bigger, plumper, all that. And as long as we're not overly manipulative of the plant kingdom as if it didn't have any rights of its own or its own evolutionary path, then it works out positively. When we neglect that, like we do chickens and raising them and not treating them decently, then we damage that whole relationship and we have unhealthy eggs, as everything else we do. Everything we touch is truly material without any spiritual involvement. Mm-hmm. We see what happens to it. It becomes unhealthy. And that disease or that tumor in someone is created by them treating themselves in an unhealthy way. Mm. And when you pinpoint what it was I was doing to create that unhealthy vibration in me, which eventually, maybe it started in the emotional body. I think most disease today in the human race starts in the emotional body, sometimes in the mind. But by repeating an emotional rejection of some part of life or an emotional hostility towards it or an emotional fear of it, you're eventually going to have an impact on your physical body that corresponds to that emotion. And eventually it's going to start becoming irritated and then inflamed and then distorted. And then pretty soon, what do you got? Disease. And so we can cut that disease out and we can do something to make it disappear, put steroids on it, and it'll shrink away. But we didn't fix the emotional pattern or the emotional problem. And so it repeats itself. It comes back. So total healing requires a relationship of love to whatever it is we're out of relationship to, which is another reason to have spiritual initiative. Mm-hmm. Start taking that relationship, not from some religion that says love God, love until it's in you, loving through you. And then all of a sudden, the powers of love become consciously part of your coexistence and your fortunes turn. And that's going to happen in the world of suffering because the world's entering a period of intense suffering. Take a look. The church is having trouble. The government's having trouble. The financial system's having trouble. Countries are having trouble with each other. This is a period of suffering. We're headed into it like straight into it. Like a hurricane, a little boat sailing straight into the hurricane like the perfect storm. And we're going to go down in it unless we choose to come up in it. And that will depend on spiritual initiative. That's why we're having to talk about it. And it's not hard to do. It's not hard to craft a really powerful, potent, useful spiritual initiative in yourself. Just by yourself, in yourself, with life. It's all there. It's all willing. You don't need anybody else outside of yourself to do it. You need to give them of it by making it a positive help to other people, but you don't need anybody else to do it. You need you to do it. We're happy to help you, and it's a good attitude, because if I'm doing that for myself, then I'm learning how to do it better. And as you learn how to do it better, you can help other people do it better. You can say, look, banging your head on the wall isn't going to give you good spiritual initiative necessarily. Why don't we take a look at that and see if maybe there's a better way you can do it? And then that's all. You know, if someone's fishing without a hook on the line, they're going to have a hard time catching a fish. But they saw somebody throwing line out in the water and they thought, oh, that's how you catch fish. And you go, well, where's your hook? Well, what's a hook? Well, that's something that goes on the end of your line. That's how you catch the fish. Oh, really? I've been that stupid before. When I was a kid growing up in Alaska, I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to cut down a tree without killing myself. I don't know how to catch a fish. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. But there's somebody around that goes, let me show you. Try to tie a knot on a hook that will keep it on the leader, which is slippery shit. And every time you hooking a fish and then having the knot come undone that holds the hook to the line and go away with your hook isn't fun. It's not a good experience. It's not a good experience for the fish either. I'll acknowledge that. But
well, even without saying anything too, it's like it naturally permeates in the environment around you. It's like you'll notice, just you doing it for yourself, it has an effect on things around you. So you don't even have to go tell that kid, hey, idiot, tie a fucking hook on there if you want to catch the fish,
They'll figure it out watching you.
They do.
It's true. Because they're going, those people are all catching fish and I'm not. And so you ask questions. How do you catch a fish around here? And there are subtle things. If you're in a lake and you're not catching fish, but you see some guy up the road that seems to be pulling them out and putting them in a basket, and you think, well, it's the bait he's using. No, he found a place where cold water runs into the lake. You see, he found that. Maybe he's lived there for a long time. And cold water is where fish go because that stimulates their ability to reproduce. There's a whole technology. And that's why this guy never tells you where his best fishing spot is, because he found there's a spring that runs into the lake there. And so I worked with a guy like that, and he would say, we were in a real estate office. I was doing real estate, and he'd say, I'm going to go out and catch a couple of fish. You want one for dinner? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll take a fish for dinner. Because it was a lake and it had big trout in it. And it didn't matter when time of day, when it was, how it was. He'd go out in a couple hours, he'd come back and he'd have enough fish for himself and he'd pass out a few. And one day I said to him, how the hell are you doing that? There's a lot of people fishing in the lake. And that's what he told me. He said, oh, I know where the cold water runs in. Because I lived here for 25 years, 30 years or something. And I grew up in Alaska with fish, but running streams are all cold in Alaska. So I didn't really have any thought about that. Now he knew what was up. So, for money, I'll tell you where that place is. And that's the way he felt about it. So spiritual initiative is something you can share, but you share it, like you said, Taylor, you're sharing it by the act of doing it. Mm-hmm. But if someone says, what are you doing? And you can say, well, I'm doing a number of things. And when we get into doing a workshop on how to bring spiritual initiative into changing your life, into empowering you with love, then we discuss those various points. There's not a lot of them. There's like 5 different things that you got to get together with, but they come from different places. Mm-hmm. The Buddhists have some wonderful things that support spiritual initiative. The Hindus do. Everybody does. Everybody has been at this in a sincere way. Christianity has incredible truths embedded in it because of love itself that entered into a human being and said, let me help you. And then by actually crucifying that human being, which is sort of short-sighted on our part, By actually crucifying that human being, we released that energy into all of humanity. That was the result of that Golgotha experience of crucifixion. So had it not happened, it might have stayed relative to that person. I don't know. But by crucifying it, you saw what happened. Kabam! It went, you tried to kill it. And by doing that, you exploded it out into the system, and it's still there. And it's been germinating underneath humanity's confusion about it, forming religions about it, being right about it, wrong about it, stupid about it, sometimes occasionally smart about it, and having some wonderfully smart people about it, like St. Francis of Assisi or some other person who got so close to the heart of love that they just began to express it perfectly, healing people. If you look at Francis and what he did amazing things, not because he was a Catholic, but because of who he was in his relationship to the spiritual initiative of love. And he would go out, if lepers came to him, he would go give them a hug, kiss them on the cheek, and they became healed from him. You don't know that about the guy because nobody pays any attention to actual miracles. They pay attention to other stuff. But his story is astounding. It's an astounding accomplishment, series of accomplishments because of his inner spiritual initiative. And it was so good that it nearly got him killed by the church. The church nearly martyred him because he was gaining so much popularity and power, it was threatening the Pope. And you can't do that in the structure. And right now, the church itself, because they're going to get a new Pope in a minute, has got its own tensions and powers, just like back in St. Francis's day. So he started the order of St. Francis, which are the Franciscans, and the church said, you got to give it to us and let us run it. And he didn't want to do that because he knew they would do things to it he didn't like. But it's either that or we kill you and take it anyway. So these powers and forces that go on in human experience aren't processes of love, they're processes of ego. And so is that a wrong thing to do? Probably. Is it a right thing to do? I don't know. Is the result in the end good? Yes, because you can't kill the spirit of St. Francis, and he was better off to give it to the church than to have them annihilated, because St. Franciscans are considered to be a really positive group within the church, which cannot be said about all the groups within the church. There's some argument about the Jesuits being not so helpful. So all of that's not my problem because I don't have to fix that church. I don't have to turn it into a perfect expression of love. Humans do. Humans have to turn every church that we all belong to into a perfect expression of love from inside of it. I can take on that church if I want to go be a St. Francis in it, but I don't think I'm probably good enough to do that. He was. But it's all going to happen because the human race wants to have spiritual initiative that produces the expression of love in our material lives. Hard to do. It takes a lot of effort and commitment. But you could start right now. You can start with your mom. You can start with your kids. I can start with my cocaine habit and my addiction to alcohol and my...
And the prostitutes. Don't forget the prostitutes.
The Russian
No, leave the prostitutes alone. They are really doing just fine. No, everything is fine. Everything in the world is exactly where and what it should be. When you give it love, it grows out of itself into love. And then we realize, oh, there's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong. It's just your point of view. You know, it's like Oliver Twist. If you raise kids to be pickpockets, that's how they're surviving in the material world with people who have pockets worth picking. It doesn't mean you judge rich people for having money or poor people for stealing it. You just bring love into the environment and you start balancing out realities in ways that you never imagined because you don't have the power of love in your kit bag to just pull it out. to pull out transformation, to pull out transmutation. And neither does your mother, and neither does your sister and my family. We have to help them. We have to help them because everybody has it in them. So why aren't they just pulling it out and applying it? Because they don't know how. They're trying to apply it emotionally, and it's not an emotion. They're trying to apply it intellectually, and it's not an intellectual thought. But yet those things can help you do it. And when you apply them properly to help you do it, it appears. And the more it appears, the more you learn how to keep it appearing, keep the relationship growing, turn the spiritual initiative into a fusion between the inner world and the outer world in harmony. And then what happens? You know what happens. You know what's going to happen. Now, what faith do you have that it will happen or that it will happen soon? Because China's collapsing and people are suffering. The dead are being frozen because they don't have enough crematoriums to burn them. There's a terrible things going on in the world right now. So we need to step up our spiritual initiative. That's why we're having this chat. All right?
Which we should carry on.
We will carry it on.
Yeah.
Well, we'll carry it off into the workshop of doing it.
Yeah.
And from now on, I'm going to do shorter these podcasts, and I'm going to make them workshop oriented. I think I try to, but Taylor keeps opening new boxes.
Damn it!
And so,
well, one thing leads to the next, you know.
One does lead to the next. All right, let's get your mom better, Seb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you. You're the chink in her armor. You're the one that can do what she can't do. I don't believe, look, we've all got them. Taylor has them. She's got a bunch of siblings like that. I got siblings like that. And they're like, no, I'm not that. I'm not this. I'm not believing that. That stuff doesn't work. That's all hoodoo. That's bullshit. That's things. And
people
some
like
of what
to entertain the thoughts, though, but it's like they keep it at arm's length, you know?
Yes, because as long as you deal with it in the intellect and as long as you deal with it in the emotional body, love won't release.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you deal directly with love in your, I'm trying to find the right word for it, but you have to put love into your consciousness at a place where it releases its potential power to you. And that means not trapping it in the intellect, which has a thought about it. You see, the intellect is not a place to hold love like that unless you build a container to do it. A container of thought, and recognize that I'm just using that container, but it's what's in the container that I want to relate to. There's a way to think about this stuff. You can put pop in a bottle, but you can't drink the bottle. You got to drink the pop. So this is how it works
Put
in
food
the
on
emotional.
a menu, but you don't eat the menu.
No, you don't. That's exactly right. Well, I'll have that menu right there. Just put some gravy over it. But so that's truth of love. Love has its own way to connect to it. It's energetic, it's dynamic, it's alive, it's incredibly potential, and you have in you the ability to deal directly with it like that. And when you do, it just goes out like that. But we have built up ways to stop that from happening subconsciously by becoming material. You got to let that go and let it in. Love doesn't hate matter. It won't destroy your material world. It will harmonize it. It will enhance it. Now, eventually, way down the road, millions of years, love's continually pouring through material world stuff will raise its vibration and evolution to the point where matter itself turns into light. That's going to happen. And you will turn into light with it. But you're already light. In the soul nature, which has been eliminated from our conversation in the world, and in your spirit nature, which is pure energy, that's how you exist. You're already there. You already live there. And to remembering yourself there frees you from your material identity.
Just take that initiative.
Take that initiative. All right. Thanks, guys. What do you want to say? Anything to close with this group?
No, just no, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Yeah,
nice to be together again, guys.
I like good to see you, Taylor.
Yeah, the triad's nice to have again.
Yeah, well, I'm
Right.
jealous of the weather you got behind you, but I'll get there.
Oh,
It's
you're
not
in
I'll
La
be
La
back.
Land.
I don't
It's
know.
I'll
pretty
be
nice
back.
over there. Come with Jack. We'll see you both next month. We'll do a
All right.
podcast together.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't you wanna know?